"I bet you she was pregnant. She was expecting a baby," said one of the wives. "You mean she was pregnant so quickly?" said another one. "The king loves her too much and she had taken over her positions with the king," the most senior wife then replied. Family virtue is naturally adored in Nigerian culture, so much that king, for instance, always inherits the wife of the past kings. For the reason for this is purposely to cater for such oloris, because of the belief that olori status should be a permanent feature of the palace. Farming was the major occupation of the villagers. The village was endowed with fertile land suitable for food and cash crops. It was the envy of the nearby villagers, who had to bow in respect for Opaso villagers' supremacy in farming and highly reputable powerful warriors. Agonde the king inherited 12 wives, that's oloris, from the past kings. He married another 8 wives in those days. The king's affluence, wealth, and popularity was partly depicted by the number of wives and children he could cater for. Agonde the king later married a young, beautiful lady called Bintu, who graduated from a university and was fond of staying in the village whenever she was on holidays. She had love and affection for village activities. She would not allow her educational background to be a barrier to interacting with other village young men and women. She studied the theatre arts in the university to enhance her cultural and traditional interest. This made her partook in most of the festivals in the village. The spectacular talent she had for drama drove her to organize a group of boys and girls as performing artists in drama featuring dancing, acting, and singing. She had an overwhelming interest in the arts, so much that she spent all her resources, her money and time in providing the costumes, musical instruments, and management needed to make the group functional and popular within the village. One thing was certain about her organization, and this was the fact that it was a symbol of success and popularity within the outside the village. The group always staged drama at the end of every year. The royal family, the king and the king's wives were always invited, so also were the village chiefs and other villagers. Bintu was the brain and beauty of Opaso village, full of admiration on one hand and envy on the other hand. She was ever focused in whatever she did. The admiration might have come from matured and elderly villagers who were associated with the progress and success of Bintu. Her simplicity lifestyle, devoid of arrogance, really worked for her, as she had no hatred for anyone. She worked very hard to achieve her plans to promote the village. Then came the end of the year's festival that was quite remarkable and unusual for Bintu. This was so because as the whole village was in great festive mood, Agonde the village king, had a different agenda in his mind. He had fallen in love with Bintu's activities and had equally fallen for Bintu's beauty. Agonde the king was often fond of looking deep into Bintu's eyes as she was singing in front of him during the festival. Bintu, on the other hand, was a very sensitive young lady. She was suspicious of the king's body language, but remained calm and never gave a damn. Nevertheless, at the end of the drama, King Agonde delivered a staggering speech of appreciation for the unique drama showcased by Bintu, the village heroine. The king praised her at length, and the standing ovation was observed by all the villagers. "Yes, she's really good," responded the whole villagers. That year's December festival ended in a remarkable happiness. 2 weeks after the festival, King Agonde sent for Bintu's Dongari, king's messenger, was sent to invite Bintu to the palace. Bintu was fast thinking, and quickly she dressed up neatly and walked down the streets to the king's palace. Dongari was back in the palace. "She's coming, your majesty," he said. The king was very happy at the feedback received from Dongari. King Agonde sent for another senior messenger to wait outside the palace and bring Bintu to a special apartment for visitors. Bintu came along gorgeously, dressed in light blue ashofi gown, locally made gown, well smartly tailored to show her beauty. She was led by the senior Dongari to the King Agonde was very pleased to receive her in the palace. She was given a warm reception and a toast for her achievement in the village. This was the beginning of an intimate relationship between the king and Bintu. As a nature would have it, the relationship developed into love after some time, and the king eventually married Bintu. Bintu's marriage was unannounced. That was the way she wanted it. She became the youngest and latest wife of King Angode. Her life in the palace was mixed with happiness and sadness. She was happy because she was comfortable with her life in the palace, and she had bright future plans. The sadness was the jealousy of the other wives of the king, who were jealous of Bintu as the most loved wife. This was the problem Bintu had to face in the palace. The king was aware of this problem, and some counseling and appealing by the king and chiefs seemed to be productive, because Bintu had come to terms with the situation, and the other wives too had acknowledged that she was one of them and had come to stay in the palace permanently. But it was difficult to wipe off rivalry and bitterness for long. Then, few months after the wedding of the Queen Bintu and the king, she began to plan for her birthday celebration that was last approaching. This would be her first birthday in the palace, and that was why she was really overjoyed at every thought of the birthday. It was her desire to make the occasion very glamorous this time, around by inviting her parents and friends to have a glimpse of the palace and to felicitate with her. Hooray! Bintu was now awake on the eve of her birthday. She was a bit confused about what arrangement to make, but the problem was short. Demonstrating their dexterity on talking drum were also visible. The birthday cake arrived in an elegant motor bus. When it was brought down, it was a gigantic and cleverly made to look exactly like the king's palace with Bintu in front. What an artistic cake, King Agondis echoed. Meanwhile, Bintu was within the palace, very busy indeed, and could possibly see most of the things going on elsewhere. In the afternoon, most all the villagers were in the king's palace. Foods and drinks were served. There was happiness everywhere, and the atmosphere was melodious. As this was going on, the village chiefs and some dignitaries were with the king in a special apartment, dining and winning. Just at the right time, Bintu appeared in her lily-colored adire dress to thank the visitors in appreciation of gift cards, love, and some other things she had received from the villagers. Immediately after this, she prepared to cut her cake. She turned backward. Unbelievable, she said as the cake stared at her. Her two hands just went straight up to her head, and with these two hands still on her head, her lips remained open for many seconds. Without expression, now she recovered from the shock. I have never seen this type of giant artistic cake in my life, she said. Her friends refused to waste time as they all melodiously echoed, "Happy birthday to you, Madam Bintu." She became very happy indeed, and still with the cake knife on her hand, she cut the cake with the assistance of the king. "Happy birthday to you," roared the villagers. Wonderfully, everybody had a taste of the cake and praised the maker of it. It was getting late, and the king had to give a vote of thanks instead of the master of ceremony, because the king really enjoyed every aspect of the ceremony, and particularly the support of the villagers. The thanks went to God first, and then all the chiefs, special guests, visitors, villagers, and all other well-wishers. "Wishing you all safe journey back home," said the king. The birthday ceremony had come and gone, but it left inedible moments in the villagers' hearts. Life continues in the palace, but the whole place needed tidying up. The occasion actually excited the king's wives and the villagers. Bintu was experiencing some changes in her body, but this was a different dimension. "I bet you she was pregnant. She was expecting a baby," said one of the wives. "You mean she was pregnant so quickly?" said another one. "The king loves her too much, and she had taken over her positions with the king," the most senior wife then replied. All of a sudden, Bintu's pregnancy was soon visible, and the whole villagers knew that she was expecting a baby or babies. very soon. Some of her friends jokingly call her twin mother as she looked almost twice her size. Few months after pregnancy, Bintu began to complain of unusual feelings within her stomach. Of course, the king knew that Bintu would soon give birth to a baby and had arranged for her to be registered at the only hospital in the village. When she got to the hospital, the doctor on duty tested her and admitted her into the inpatient ward, where the maternity ward was located. Few hours later, the new baby arrived after much labor. He was a baby boy, the nurse's sister remarked. Bintu was exceedingly happy to see the baby, and she carried it on her tummy while trying on the bed, though she was still in pain of labor. The king was really happy to see the newly born baby. Other wives of the king congratulated Bintu and carried the baby in turns. Because of the king's experience about babies, the king called Bintu and told her about what happened at the night she was taken to the hospital. 3 white pigeons flew to the palace in front of king's room at exactly midnight, walked around, sang and turned their heads to left and right, and then disappeared, the king said.